What if your grandmother's fertility foods weren't old wives' tales, but the exact compounds doctors study today? Most people trying to conceive go straight to supplements and clinics. Few realize scripture mapped out fertility foods before the first fertility clinic ever opened. These aren't vague folk remedies. They're foods with published research behind them. Harvard studies, peer-reviewed fertility journals. Today, I'm showing you all 7. Stick around. Number 4 is something your grandmother probably kept in a bowl on the counter. A randomized clinical trial just found it improves male fertility markers in 12 weeks flat. Number 7 comes from the most famous promise in the whole Bible, the exact phrase God used for the land he promised his people. Reproductive researchers are only now starting to understand why that promise might matter for your body too. Subscribe for more like this. Let's get into it. Number 1. Pomegranate, the fruit holding 1,000 seeds. In Song of Solomon, the bride brings her beloved home to drink spiced wine made from her own pomegranate juice. One of the most intimate images in the Bible, built entirely around this fruit. People understood this fruit mattered long before anyone could explain why. Now science is catching up. Pomegranate is loaded with punicolations, a powerful antioxidant. Researchers at Fertility University found regular pomegranate juice improved sperm concentration, motility, and structure in animal studies. They linked it to the fruit's ability to fight oxidative stress, the damage that harms reproductive cells. Human trials are still catching up, but fertility clinics already flag pomegranate's antioxidants as one of the most promising additions for protecting egg and sperm quality alike. Quality matters here. The antioxidant punch lives in the seeds and pure juice, not the sugar-loaded pomegranate cocktail on the shelf. That's mostly apple or grape juice with a splash of pomegranate thrown in. The traditional use is simple. Eat the arils fresh, or drink the juice pressed with nothing added. No sugar, no dilution. The way it reached that table in Solomon's story. Thousands of years before any clinical trial, someone was already handing this fruit to the person they loved most. Number 2. Dates. The fruit the Bible compared to a bride. In Song of Solomon, the bridegroom compares his beloved to a palm tree, the same tree that produces dates, and vows to climb it for the fruit. In the ancient Near East, the date palm stood for fruitfulness itself, a tree that could bear fruit for generations in the same family. High praise and deliberate. In a culture built on fruitfulness, there was no higher compliment. Modern obstetric research zeroed in on exactly why dates matter most in the final weeks of pregnancy. Multiple clinical trials out of Jordan and Iran gave pregnant women 6 to 7 dates a day during their final month, then tracked labor outcomes against women who didn't. The date-eating group showed greater cervical dilation on admission, needed less medical induction, and moved through early labor faster than the control group. A pooled analysis of those trials confirmed it. The effect held up, not just a fluke in one study. Researchers believe the fruit's natural sugars and fatty acids help the uterus respond better to the body's own labor hormones. The traditional use is straightforward. Dates daily through the final weeks, alongside normal prenatal care. Preparation, not a last-minute fix once labor starts. The bridegroom in that ancient poem knew a body built to bear fruit when he saw one. Modern medicine is just catching up. Number 3. Lentils, the stew that cost a birthright. In Genesis, Esau comes in from the field exhausted and smells Jacob's red lentil stew. He trades away his entire birthright, his inheritance as the firstborn, for a single bowl. One of the most consequential meals in the Old Testament. And the food at the center of it? Something most people already have in their pantry. Even the plainest foods in Scripture carried more weight than we give them credit for. Lentils are one of the richest plant sources of non-heme iron available. A Harvard-led study following over 18,000 women for 8 years found that women getting more iron had a meaningfully lower risk of ovulation-related infertility. Researchers think iron plays a direct role in supporting healthy ovulation. But newer research complicates the picture. Very high-dose iron supplements might actually lower ovarian reserve in some women. That's different from getting iron the way lentils deliver it, steadily, through food. Here, the food itself looks like the safer, better-studied choice, not megadosing on supplements. The traditional use doesn't need reinventing. Lentils cooked simply into a stew or soup, the same way Jacob likely made his. Work best eaten regularly, not as an occasional side. Esau traded his birthright for a bowl of this. Turns out he wasn't just satisfying hunger. He may have been feeding something else too. Number 4. Walnuts, the fruit hidden in the garden of nuts. In Song of Solomon, the beloved walks into a garden of walnut trees to check if the vines budded and the pomegranates bloomed. A small detail, tucked into one of the most romantic passages in Scripture. A garden just beginning to flourish. Walnuts earned their place in that garden. Turns out there was a reason. Modern science tested this one directly, and the results are some of the clearest on this list. Researchers ran a 12-week randomized clinical trial on 117 healthy men eating a typical Western diet. Half added 75 grams of walnuts to their daily meals. Half changed nothing. By the end, the walnut group showed real improvements in sperm vitality, motility, and shape. The control group showed none. Researchers traced it to the omega-3 and omega-6 fats walnuts are packed with, fats that appear to protect sperm at a structural level. Storage matters here. Those same beneficial fats oxidize fast once the shell cracks, and the nut sits exposed to heat, light, and air. Rancid walnuts have lost what made them useful in the study. The traditional use. Walnuts whole in the shell when you can get them, or shelled and refrigerated. A small daily handful, roughly what fits in one palm. A bridegroom once wandered into a garden looking for signs of new growth. Science just found one more reason he was onto something. Number 5. Olive oil, the oil of the fruitful house. In Psalm 128, a blessing over new households, the writer compares a fruitful wife and children to olive shoots gathered around the family table. One of the few places in Scripture where olive imagery describes children directly, not just the oil. The olive tree meant something specific: steady, long-term fruitfulness. Modern fertility research keeps landing on the same idea. A study out of Athens followed 244 women through their first round of IVF. Researchers scored how closely each woman's diet matched a Mediterranean pattern: heavy in olive oil, vegetables, whole grains. Women with the highest scores had close to a 50% live birth rate. Women with the lowest scores saw little more than half that. Researchers linked the gap to the healthy fats and antioxidants a Mediterranean diet provides, olive oil chief among them. Here's the distinction that matters. The polyphenols behind these effects live mostly in extra virgin, cold-pressed olive oil. Heavily refined light, or pure olive oil, strips out much of what made it valuable in these studies. The traditional use was consistent throughout Scripture. Olive oil poured directly over food, used as the base for cooking, taken by the spoonful on its own. A tablespoon or two worked into daily meals mirrors what the Mediterranean diet studies actually measured. A psalm once compared children to olive shoots around a table. The oil itself may have quietly helped those children arrive. Number 6. Wheat and barley, the harvest that grew a family tree. Ruth arrives in Bethlehem, a poor widow, with nothing. Right at the start of barley harvest. She gleans grain from the edges of Boaz's field, just to survive, day after day, through the whole harvest season. That field is where she meets the man she'll marry, and where the family line leading to King David, and later Jesus, begins. Not a footnote. The setting where everything after got planted. Whole wheat and barley are two of the most reliable food sources of folate, a B vitamin your body needs for healthy cell division. Folate plays a well-documented role in ovulation. Low intake has long been linked to ovulatory problems and early pregnancy complications. Researchers following thousands of women trying to conceive found that swapping refined carbs for whole grains meant meaningfully lower rates of ovulatory infertility. Whole grains also carry a lower glycemic load than refined flour, and those blood sugar spikes from refined carbs have been tied to disrupted ovulation over time. Processing matters most here. Refining strips out the fiber, minerals, and natural folate in wheat and barley, leaving mostly starch behind. Many refined flours add synthetic folic acid back in, but the fiber and mineral loss stays. The traditional use, whole and minimally processed. Barley and wheat ground into simple bread and porridge, kept close to their whole grain form, not refined into fine white flour. Choosing whole wheat or barley over white bread and pasta today follows that same principle. Ruth gleaned that grain just to survive one harvest. It ended up feeding a family line that outlasted her by 1,000 years. Number 7. Milk, the promise poured over a nation. At the burning bush, God tells Moses he's leading an enslaved people out of Egypt, to a land flowing with milk and honey. The phrase repeats more than 20 times across the Old Testament, the defining image of everything God promised his people. Milk wasn't chosen by accident. It symbolized abundance because it meant the ability to sustain new life. Modern research is looking at that connection literally. A Harvard-led study following over 18,000 women found something unexpected. Women drinking low-fat or skim milk had a higher risk of ovulatory infertility. Women drinking whole, full-fat milk had a lower risk. The effect wasn't huge, and later studies on dairy and fertility have shown mixed results since. But the direction has held across more than one investigation. When it comes to ovulation, full-fat milk seems to behave differently in the body than the version stripped of its fat. Processing changes this one completely. Skim and low-fat milk are whole milk with the fat mechanically removed, an industrial step ancient Israel never had the equipment or the reason to perform. The traditional use, whatever came straight from the animal. Whole milk, unaltered, often turned into simple cheese or yogurt rather than stored as liquid. A nation was promised a land flowing with milk. Turns out the whole version may have been the point all along. 7 foods, thousands of years of quiet observation about what helps a body do what it's built to do. Somewhere along the way, we split ancient wisdom from modern medicine. We started treating scripture as spiritual literature and food as separate from healing. For most of human history, they were never separate at all. Here's the takeaway. The people writing these texts weren't primitive. They were paying close attention, generation after generation, to what actually worked. Modern science keeps landing on the same conclusions they reached first. Pomegranate protects reproductive cells from damage. Dates prepare the body for labor. Lentils support healthy ovulation through iron. Walnuts improve sperm quality in as little as 12 weeks. Olive oil, within a real dietary pattern, is tied to higher IVF success. Whole grains support ovulation through folate. And milk, the very symbol of the promised land, may matter more in its whole, unaltered form. Scripture was right long before anyone could explain why. It wasn't in the business of naming compounds. The point was always, pay attention to what nourishes you. One honest note before you go. This list means nothing if it stays a list. These foods support your body. They don't replace your doctor. That matters most if you're actively trying to conceive or managing a diagnosed fertility issue. Eat this way alongside good medical care, not instead of it. Quality still matters. A sugar-loaded pomegranate cocktail or rancid walnuts sitting in a pantry for a year aren't doing what the real, whole version does. I've linked where I buy several of these below. Drop a comment and tell me which one surprised you most. Team pomegranate, team walnuts, or team milk? Hit subscribe and ring the bell. We post every week, connecting ancient wisdom with the science that keeps proving it right. See you in the next one.